Hey, how you doing? It's Clayton here from howtodrawcomics.net and welcome to today's lesson. This lesson is actually part of a larger Skillshare lesson that I wanted to share with you here today because drawing the female head from the top down and bottom up 3/4 views is extremely tricky. Why is it tricky? Because all the proportions and the shape of the head, the placement of the facial features change as we begin to rotate the head and observe it in space. And so what we have to do is begin to understand it in a more three-dimensional capacity, begin to understand it and all the attributes that go into it, including the facial features, in terms of form. So I really wanted to share the first part of this lesson, and in this particular segment, what we're going to be going over is the top-down 3/4 view of the female head. And if you get some value out of it, and hopefully you do, I really do hope that this lesson leaves a significant impact on your abilities as a comic book artist, or really any artist in any field. If you do find it useful and it helps you out, then I highly recommend that you check out the full Skillshare lesson, which will also go over the bottom-up view of the female head. Now, I'll also be later, at a much later date, releasing all of these lessons in one full course. So if you don't have a Skillshare subscription, that's completely fine. I understand. We can, and the course will be available later on down the track, and you can just get all these lessons in one full course. But the reason that I really want to kind of encourage you to jump onto Skillshare is because it's not just this lesson that you'll be able to check out in full, but it's also the fact that you've got such a variety of different topics on there that you can discover and learn about. And I personally have a Skillshare subscription. I've had it for many months now, and I'm always learning new things on there. I really racked up my hours in learning material, and I think that it's one of the most amazing platforms that you can jump into in order to learn this stuff. I'm not sponsored by Skillshare in any way. They don't even know that I'm making this video, so I'm honestly giving this recommendation to you out of a sincere want to help you to improve. That's why this channel exists in the first place. So I hope that you enjoy this video. We're going to start out by going over the foundations of the female head and how to set it up from the top down 3/4 perspective, how to plot out the facial features, and then really bring all of that to a close by polishing the drawing up and presenting it in a professional manner. I hope that you get a ton of value out of this lesson. Thanks so much for watching, and again, here is the link to the Skillshare lesson in full if you do find this video useful. Alright, let's jump straight into it. Okay, so we're going to start out with a sphere for the cranium. It's going to allow us to figure out how big the head is going to be and where it's going to be placed on the page. From there, we'll draw a line straight down the middle of the face, all the way down to the chin, and we'll place in the jawline. Then plot out where the facial features are going to sit. Now, because we are looking at the female head from the top down 3/4 view here, what we're going to see is a slight foreshortening of where those facial features are placed. Now, over to the right here, we're drawing the female head in the opposite direction now. So now we're looking at the bottom up 3/4 view. And as you can see, we took very much the same approach. We started out with the sphere, we placed in the middle of the face, then the jawline. And you'll notice that the jawline between these two very different points of view has significantly changed in terms of its shape. That's an important thing to keep in mind, because as you look at the head and you begin to turn it in these different views of perspective, what you'll find is that not only does the shape of the jaw change, but also the shape of the head itself begins to distort. So now we're jumping onto the facial features here, and we've got the eyes placed in on the top-down 3/4 view of the female head. We've got the nose, and then we've got the lips. And what you'll notice is that we are now looking at the mouth of this character, and we can see less of the top lip and a little bit more of the bottom lip. You'll also notice that we cannot see whatsoever the bottom plane of the nose because of the angle that we're looking at the head on here. The geometry of the nose, its structure, is literally obscuring our view of that bottom plane. And you'll also notice that the eyes have changed shape too. Now combined, what I'm trying to tell you here is that when you begin to turn the head in space, every single aspect of it, the shape of the head, the facial features, and the shape of those facial features, where they're positioned, will be distorted and foreshortened within that perspective. So there's a lot of things that change, and oftentimes what will make you most effective at being able to draw the head in all these different dynamic angles, and there are many of them, is not just understanding what the facial features and the shape of the head looks like in these angles individually, but also understanding the 3D geometry, understanding the forms that you're dealing with. And sometimes we're going to be talking about forms here on a very subtle level. You know, if you think about the three-dimensional forms of the eye, for example, and how the eye fits onto the face underneath the ridge of the brow, and then the nose, and how, as we look at it within this particular viewpoint, we can see how the tip of the nose lowers down toward the top lip, lower than it would otherwise be sitting if we were looking at the head straight on, and certainly lower than if we were looking at the head in the other view that we've done up here, where we're seeing it from the bottom-up perspective. And then, of course, all of the facial features combined are going to be lowered as the head tilts downward and we start to see those facial features and the distance between them grows smaller and smaller and smaller toward the bottom of the head. But then, in opposition to that, what we'll end up seeing is them spreading apart as we get closer to the top of the head. So again, that foreshortening is going to occur, and sometimes there's not an exact method. There's not going to be an exact measurement system that you can use in order to really nail that. Oftentimes, you'll just have to use your eyes in order to make these judgments. You'll have to ask yourself whether or not that looks right to you. And the way in which you'll begin to become more and more familiar with it so that you don't have to think about it so much is just through repetition. And every time you draw, for example, the eyebrows too close to the eyes in this particular perspective, because they have shifted significantly here. Again, in the top-down view of the female head, the eyebrows are going to lower toward the top of the eye itself, and we're going to see less of that underside plane around the brow there. But the distance as to what you should be taking that brow down and the distance between the top of the eye there isn't 100%. Like, I'm not sure myself exactly where that should be. So I'm using my own eyes here to judge whether or not that looks right to me. And it looks okay. But inevitably, I'm going to make mistakes as well. And I've been drawing for a very long time now. But I'm making less mistakes than when I first began, of course. And it's through those mistakes that you're able to catch yourself off guard, especially when you find that, hey, maybe you didn't execute that particular part of the drawing in the right way. And when you're able to catch yourself like that, then that automatically causes you to pay more attention to those specific areas within your drawing that you could improve upon. And there's a very good chance that the next time you draw the female head in this particular point of view again, you'll be very conscious of the mistakes that you made that last time. And you'll be conscious of them in a good way, in a way that causes you to pay attention to them this time, so that there's a significantly less chance of you making that very same mistake. Now, of course, we've gone ahead here and we've drawn in the hair on top of the head. And we've gone over this in previous lessons. It's very much the exact same approach that we went over for the previous head tutorials. We started out with a very basic, very rough idea as to what the shape of the hairstyle was going to be, and then we began working over the top of it, splitting the hair up into finer and finer clumps, and adding a little bit of texture to it through the rendering. So now I'm going in and I'm starting to add in the line weights around the face, just to make sure that the facial features are standing out and that the overall shape of the jawline there is also standing out in a nice, vivid way. And this is really just for aesthetics. So the structure is done, the placement of the facial features has been worked out, and all in all, the drawing is essentially done. So now what we need to focus on is making sure that we're presenting it in the best way possible. And that comes through the additional details that we're going to start putting in here to really wrap this illustration up. You can see that I'm adding in some additional rendering around the hair there, just to really get that separation occurring within the complex, intricate composition that we've got there for its style. And this can be something which does take practice as well. All of this takes practice and dedication. And I think that what the most important thing is, in order to be effective at practice, is to have that dedication, that drive to continue working on this stuff each and every day. Because the more that you can practice, don't just stop at one head sketch from the top down 3/4 view. Do 5 of them, do 6 of them in a single session, and really try to improve upon each one as you go through those iterations. So again, I'm adding line weights in around the hair here, and that's going to help me to gain some clarity on the separation and the layering of the hair to give it that extra level of depth and three-dimensionality. Now those line weights are really just placed in with a combination of the amount of pressure that I'm applying to my stylus as I work and the size of the brush that I'm working with. And combined, those two elements, the size of the brush and the amount of pressure that I'm applying, are going to help me to capture the kind of line that I'm looking for within the drawing. And if the line needs to be a little bit darker or a little bit heavier, or maybe it needs to be lightened up, all of that is going to be controlled through the amount of pressure that I'm applying. The harder I press down, the darker that line is going to be. It's going to let out more density. It's as if you are working, we are working in Clip Studio here, otherwise known as Manga Studio. I haven't upgraded to the new version just yet. I'm a bit behind the times on that one, but even though we're working digitally, it works in very much the same way as a traditional pencil would. So the harder you press down with a traditional pencil, the harder your line is going to be, the darker it will be. The lighter you press, the lighter it's going to be. It's actually quite simple to get your head around, luckily, because there's a lot of complicated aspects to drawing that we have to keep in mind other than that. But again, I found that a certain level of artistic intuition kicks in after some time, after some repetition. You begin to figure out what level of pressure you need to apply to your stylus in order to get the line that you're looking for. You begin to recognize that what the aesthetics are within your line work that you want to consistently capture from drawing to drawing. Now here's something interesting. I noticed that the jawline of this particular female head wasn't quite looking correct. The chin needed to come out just a little bit further there. And I found that the side of the face, the far side of the face there, just looked a little bit flat. It didn't have enough shape to it. And pulling the chin out a little further really does add that additional interest to the shape that was previously missing. So now we've got that nice contour running along the side of the cheek there, then around the mouth, and you can see there's that nice curve there, and then that line transitions into the chin. It gives it this extra level of three-dimensionality. We're able to get a better idea of what the structure of this face entails. We're describing it more accurately as well. And if it wasn't for my ability to spot this mistake out, just through my own, again, that artistic intuition, just looking at the drawing, analyzing it, a healthy amount. You don't want to overanalyze your work because that's just going to make you feel insecure. It's going to make you feel too nervous to experiment, to really put yourself out there as an artist. But you do still want to have a certain, I guess I would say, rather than judging your work, you're more monitoring it to ensure that it's coming together in the way that you want it to come together. And by doing that, and by becoming better and better at doing that, again, that's a skill in and of itself. All these different components that make you into a great artist require practice. And sometimes it's to do with the drawing directly, sometimes it's all to do with your mindset. Thanks so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this lesson. If you'd like to see the full lesson, and again, I highly recommend that you do check it out, not just for the lesson itself, but also for all the other content that you're going to find on Skillshare. It's an amazing educational learning resource for artists and really anyone, in all honesty. I've learned more than just about art on Skillshare. I've also learned a ton of other topics that I wouldn't have learned about otherwise. So I highly suggest that you check it out. Again, here is the link to the full lesson on Skillshare if you're interested in knowing more and drawing the head, the female head, in the bottom-up three-quarter perspective, which in my personal opinion is probably one of the hardest angles to draw the female head on out of any other angle that I can think of. Now, on top of that, I'd also like to, again, just mention that if you are not really into Skillshare, you don't want to sign up, that's totally fine as well, because these lessons on the female head will be available in a single course that you'll be able to get through howtodrawcomics.net or Udemy at a later date. So if you want to wait till then, you can also do that. In the meantime, again, I hope that you enjoyed this lesson. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, keep on practicing, keep on creating, and I'll see you in the next video.